Welcome to our video presentation about the fascinating and controversial Cavite Mutiny. Come, explore the political tensions, historical nuances, and captivating storylines surrounding this significant period in Philippine history. We'll examine the main figures, motivations, and consequences of the Cavite Mutiny from its beginning to its finish, illuminating its significance and long-lasting effect. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome for today's event on the historical event known as the Cavite Mutiny. We have a diverse panel of experts here to discuss the various perspectives surrounding the significant moment in history. So let us begin in our debate. Proponent of the Filipino cause. The Cavite Mutiny was a pivotal moment in the fight for Filipino independence from Spanish to colonial rule. It was a courageous act of resistance against oppression, and we must honor the bravery of the Filipino people who participated in it. Proponent of the Filipino heroism. The Cavite Mutiny was a courageous stand by the Filipino soldier against the Spanish oppression. It symbolizes the resilience and bravery of our Filipino people in fight for freedom and independence. Advocate for historical significance. The Cavite Mutiny marked a crucial point in our struggle for independence from Spanish to colonial rule. It lightened up the flames of resistance and inspires the generations of the Filipino people for their right and freedom. The Cavite Mutiny was a reflection of the deep-seated grievances of the Filipino people under the Spanish rule. It sparked a renewed sense of nationalism and paved the way for the future movement toward independence. I couldn't agree more, but the Cavite Mutiny was a pivotal event that ignited the flames of the Filipino nationalism. It played a crucial role in shaping the course of the Philippine history and paved the way for future resistance and movement against the colonial rule. The Cavite Mutiny was not just a military uprising. It was a manifestation of deep-seated grievances against the colonial oppression. It galvanized nationalist sentiments and propelled the Filipino people toward the path of self-determination.
Hello everyone and the debater 3. While the Cavite Mutiny was significant, we must also consider the broader historical context in which it occurred. It was not it was not an isolated event, but rather part of a larger struggle for liberation across the Philippines. Understanding this context is crucial in appreciating its importance. Advocate for national unity. Indeed, the Cavite Mutiny was an unifying force that brought together Filipinos from all walks of life in their quest for sovereignty. It served as a powerful reminder of our shared identity and collective struggle against oppression. Champion of Filipino identity. The Cavite Mutiny is an integral part of our national identity. It embodies the spirit of courage and defiance that defines the Filipino character. By remembering and honoring the sacrifices of those who participated, we reaffirm our commitment to sovereignty and dignity.
Skeptic of Spanish rule. Indeed, the Cavite Mutiny exposed the oppressive nature of Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines. The mutineers were driven by a desire for freedom and justice, and their actions serve as a catalyst for the Filipino people's aspiration for self-determination. As a skeptic of colonial interpretation of history, I believe it is essential to reclaim the narratives of the Cavite Mutiny from the perspective Filipino people. We must challenge colonial narratives that seek to undermine our agency and dignity. As a skeptic of colonial narratives, I believe it is crucial to reclaim the narratives of the Cavite Mutiny from the perspective of the oppressed. The mutineers were not traitors but patriots who stood up against injustice. We must resist attempts to vilify their memory.
As a Filipino citizen, I believe it's essential to recognize the sacrifices made by the participants of the Cavite Mutiny. Their courage and determination inspire us to continue the fight for justice and sovereignty in our nation. The bravery and sacrifice of the mutineers in the Cavite Mutiny should be commemorated and honored. Their action inspired us to uphold the value of freedom, justice, self-determination in our pursuit of a better future for our nation. The heroes of the Cavite Mutiny deserve our utmost respect and admiration. Their bravery and sacrifices should be commemorated through memorials, monument, and educational initiative to ensure that their legacy lives in our future generation.
I must respectfully disagree with the positive portrayal of the Cavite Mutiny. While it's important to acknowledge its significance, we must also critically examine its impact and legacy. Some argue that the mutiny's violent aftermath led to further repression and hindered the progress of the Filipino independence movement. While I acknowledge the significance of the Cavite Mutiny, we must also recognize the limitations of armed rebellion as a means of achieving social and political change. Peaceful mine resistance and diplomacy offer more sustainable paths toward liberation and justice. While I acknowledge the significance of the Cavite Mutiny, we must also consider its practical implications. Armed uprisings, like the one at Cavite, often led to violence and bloodshed without achieving tangible gains. We should focus on peaceful means of achieving our goals.
Furthermore, the glorification of the nationalist movements like the Cavite Mutiny can perpetuate divisive narratives and overlook the complexities of colonial history. We should approach historical events with a more nuanced understanding and avoid romanticizing acts of violence. It is important to avoid dramatizing historical figure in event, including the Cavite Mutiny. While the mutineers may have been driven by their noble intention, they are also fallible human beings with their own motivation and shortcomings. We should be cautious of glorifying the participants of the Cavite Mutiny as a flawless heroes. They were human beings with their own flaws and complexities. It's essential to approach historical figures with a critical lens rather than idealizing them.
Thank you. I agree to the statement of Ms. Gatan. Advocate for peaceful resistance. Instead of celebrating acts of violence, we should focus on advocating for peaceful resistance and diplomacy as means of achieving independence. The Cavite Mutiny serves as a reminder of consequences of armed rebellion and the importance of pursuing nonviolent strategies for change. Advocate for comprehensive education. I believe the focus should be providing a comprehensive education that critically examines the complexities of colonial history, including the Cavite Mutiny. We need to empower students to think critically and analyze historical events from multiple perspectives. Advocate for contextualization. We must contextualize the Cavite Mutiny within the broader history of colonialism and resistance in the Philippines. By examining the socio-political conditions that led to Mutiny, we gain a deeper understanding of its significance and legacy.
We must also be cautious of constructing hero narratives around historical figures involved in Cavite Mutiny. While their action may have been brave, they were also flawed individuals with their own motivation and interests. It's essential to critically assess their roles in shaping Philippine history. Nationalist agendas often distort historical events like Cavite Mutiny to political purposes. We must be wary of narratives that seek to promote narrow nationalist interests at the expense of objective historical analysis and understanding.
Rather than dwelling on past conflicts, we should strive for reconciliation and healing between all parties affected by the Cavite Mutiny. Only through dialogue and understanding can we move forward as a unified nation and learn from the mistakes of the past. Instead of dwelling on past conflicts, we should focus on promoting reconciliation and understanding between all parties affected by the Cavite Mutiny. Only through dialogue and empathy we can heal the wounds of history and move on forward as a unified nation. Instead of perpetuating divisions and animosities, we should strive for reconciliation and understanding. The focus should be on fostering dialogue and cooperating between all parties involved in the Cavite Mutiny to build a more inclusive and unified nation or future.
Points raised by fellow debaters, historical revisionism, can start our understanding the past and perpetuate falsehood. We must strive for accuracy and honesty in our interpretation of events like the Cavite Mutiny. I, I echo the sentiments of my fellow debaters, revisionist histories that distort our daily. The realities of the Cavite Mutiny undermine our collective memory and erode our understanding of the past. We must strive our accuracy and honesty in our historical interpretation.